The stages of listening to Boise State Public Radio podcasts. Step 1, testing the waters. You tune into an episode or two. Nothing too serious. Step 2, you got a little hooked on one of those series like Extremely American or Scandalized, and now you're binging. No judgment, but you did listen to it in one day. Step 3, now you're subscribed to a feed. You get notifications to your phone every time there's a new daily episode of The Connector or Idaho Matters. I see where this is going. Step 4, you realize how much time you're spending with Boise State Public Radio podcasts and the fact that it doesn't cost you a dime. Step 5, you decide to step up and support your podcast listening because you can, because you want to, not because you have to. All right, now's the time, you podcast fan you. Go to boisestatepublicradio.org and click donate to support your love of Boise State Public Radio podcast listening today.
From Boise State Public Radio News, this is The Connector. It's Idaho's daily news. Good morning. I'm George Prentice. This morning, we have a story from Idaho Democratic leaders after a pretty lousy year politically, and we'll hear what they're looking for in 2025. We've got some really good news in regards to wildlife crossings. You may have heard about this, crossings over Idaho highways. And we've got some news regarding one of downtown Boise's larger employers, Darigold, the big dairy. It is Monday, already the 23rd of December, and here come today's stories. Now that the dust is settling on the political year that was 2024, a year where Democrats saw substantial losses, Democrats are searching for new leadership across the country. And James Dawson reports on what Idaho's top Democrat is looking for.
It's a wide-open race for the next chair of the Democratic National Committee, whose job is focused on getting the party's candidates elected across the country. Potential candidates range from moderates to liberals, but Idaho State Democratic Party Chair Laura Necochea says where they land on the ideological spectrum doesn't matter. She says the next DNC chair needs to be able to unify the coalitions making up the party.
To come together across, our minor policy disagreements we might hold to advance the agenda of electing more Democrats so that we can implement more of these policies that lift up working families.
Aside from managerial skills, Necochea says the next chair should also be able to effectively talk to voters who actively tune out the news and tend to vote Republican. She and other party officials will elect the new DNC chairperson on February 1st. James Dawson, Boise State Public Radio News.
1 year after missing out on federal funding to improve wildlife crossings on state highways, the Idaho Transportation Department has been awarded nearly $21 million. That to bring 3 new wildlife crossings to Idaho. Troy Oppie reports.
Congress created the Wildlife Crossings Program to try and reduce the more than 1 million annual car accidents involving animals in the U.S. About 200 people nationwide die each year on average from those accidents. Idaho was not among 17 states selected for the first $110 million in funding awarded last year, but will get $20.9 million in the current round of funding for 3 underpass crossings and 8-foot-tall fencing along 6 miles of Highway 30 at Rocky Point in southeast Idaho's Bear Lake County. The area is a mule deer migration route. ITD says about 100 animals each year die in accidents with motorists on that stretch of highway. The project was first proposed in 2019 with construction planned to begin this coming summer. Troy Oppie, Boise State Public Radio News.
It's no big surprise, but it's not any less disturbing. Climate change put added stress on Christmas tree farms this year. Some researchers are trying to figure out how to mitigate those threats going forward, and Hannah Mersbach has that story.
Conifers across the globe are struggling to adapt to changing climates. And Christmas trees or Douglas, Fraser, and noble firs are no exception.
The slightly warmer temperatures, slightly less rain, results in more stress on the trees.
Justin Whitehill leads the Christmas tree genetics program at North Carolina State University.
And because of that more stress we're seeing on the trees, we're also seeing more favorability going to the proliferation of diseases and insects.
Since cold temperatures aren't killing them off. These pests and diseases could make your tree drier earlier with browning needles, and trees on lots may be on average smaller. Whitehill's lab is focused on studying the genetics of Christmas trees to produce firs that are more resilient to the threats of climate change. He hopes to boost their natural defense mechanisms against extreme weather events and disease. For the Mountain West News Bureau, I'm Hannah Mersbach.
One of downtown Boise's high-profile businesses, Darigold, wants to expand, not out, but up. Josh Rose is the senior project engineer manager at Darigold. He came before a City of Boise hearing examiner to remind the city that Darigold is a 24/7 operation that produces massive amounts of dairy products at their downtown site. They've been there since the 1930s.
Annual production is 12.5 million pounds of cottage cheese, 8 million pounds of sour cream, 54 million aseptic bottles filled. That comes in different formats of heavy whipping cream, what we call fit milk and chocolate. And there's 16 million quarts and pint cartons and 22 million half-gallon cartons.
Darigold needs one of their silos to expand to go up for capacity. The silo in question is currently about 48 feet. They want to take that down and put up a new 78-foot silo. They say they're running out of storage on site. But the hearing examiner tapped the brakes. She said Darigold was going to need to point to a significant hardship, especially if it might be a hardship for something like public resources, such as water, and if a new silo could actually help reserve water so that it wouldn't have to be emptied and cleaned out more often. Darigold agreed to come back in February to strengthen their argument. The stage is now set for next week's college football playoffs, round 2, with Boise State very much a part of that excitement. The Broncos will take on Penn State, which beat SMU this past weekend in round 1. The Nittany Lions and Broncos will play at the Fiesta Bowl on New Year's Eve. Yes, there are 6 other great teams, but first things first, the Fiesta Bowl will be a week from tomorrow, New Year's Eve, the 31st, and the big game will kick off at 5:30 Mountain Time. And while there is ample attention paid to this week's Christmas traditions, we should also note that Hanukkah will also begin this week. There are big menorah lighting ceremonies scheduled for Wednesday in Coeur d'Alene and in Idaho Falls also on Wednesday. Ketchum will light up a community menorah on Thursday, and then next week, 1 week from today, there will be a menorah lighting at the State House. And we want to note that there will be a Kwanzaa celebration at Napa College Church this coming Saturday evening. And that is today's episode of The Connector. Say to stay in touch with the news, check out BoiseStatePublicRadio.org or download the free Boise State Public Radio app. No worries, we've got you covered during the holidays, but we want you to be safe. We want you to be there. We'll be here if you're there. Did that make sense? We want you to be there if we're here. I think you get the message. We count on you. You can count on us. We've got your back this year and next. And for now, thanks for listening.
We could all use a little help navigating the news these days. The Consider This podcast wants to give you a hand. 6 days a week, we'll help you make sense of the day's biggest news story and what it means for you in less than 15 minutes. Listen now to the Consider This podcast from NPR.